This session's going to start with a task. Task 1, cultural heritage probes. So each group will have an item and they'll show you pictures of them, which may be tangible or intangible. And in your group, you'll use it to explore ethics, methods, methodologies, and also to generate a data set in CSV format, which is comma separated format, which you can make in Excel or Google Sheets. So the first group will have some jokes. In this case, jokes destined for Christmas crackers, a very common thing in the UK. Some of the jokes will be stupid, some will be funny, some may be mildly offensive because jokes in these crackers often are can be really crass. Jokes about mother-in-laws, well, I hope not too bad these days, but they may not be great jokes. But I invite you to explore them as a group. To create a spreadsheet of jokes, you'll be given your group, probably just by where you're sitting, groups of 4 or 5, depending on the size of the group. What kind of data structure do you need? What columns do you need? What kind of data will you represent? What are the ethical implications of using these jokes? Where will you source them if you want to find other jokes? There's a little link to a joke site here. Do you know any jokes? Do you want to add jokes to this? Another group will have a recipe book. I've made it myself, actually. Here it is. Let's pretend it's a simulation that this is a recipe book you're given as a curator, as a researcher, as an archivist, as an activist, as a programmer, whatever your role is. And you have to work out how to represent this. So don't take the contents too seriously. It's a dummy set of data. But how do you organize this if you have to make a spreadsheet? What kind of columns do you need? What kind of data will you represent? What are the ethical implications of doing this? What, if any, thoughts do you have about engagement activities with a particular group? Who would that group be? Does it open up further ideas for activities beyond this specific artifact, a cookbook? The listening glass, inspired by Bill Gaver. A listening glass was packaged with instructions for users to hold an ordinary drinking glass. Hold it to your ear, and when you hear an interesting sound, write a description of what you heard. You can write it on the glass, but also with a special pen you'll have, but also create a spreadsheet, a CSV format spreadsheet of what people heard. And again, what kind of data will you represent? Do you need to include other data, such as metadata about where you were or who the person was, for example? Is that needed? What are the ethical implications of doing this? What, if any, thoughts do you have about engagement activities focused on this data set? Does it open up further ideas beyond this specific artifact? Place. You'll have a map, and we'll give you a really random coordinate system. If it's in somewhere where there are I don't know, and even Antarctica has people, right? Researchers there. So actually, wherever it is, unless it's in the middle of the ocean, thousands of miles away from any island, it will still belong to somebody. So you still may do the work of researching what, if any, cultural heritage data can you identify as being associated with the place. The only exception where you can rethrow the dice, as it were, you might go like this, is where it's so far into the ocean you can't really find anything. But I would still challenge you. Someone will probably, in theory, own that bit of ocean. I don't know. There might have been events. But if it's impossible, rethrow the dice and find another location. Does anyone in your group come from that area? Does anyone have real knowledge, grounded knowledge about that location, or less grounded, abstract, intellectual knowledge about that location, or both? Create a spreadsheet of your data findings. You may have to go online and do some research or talk to people if you're lucky enough to have someone from that location. And think about approaches to working with this place and its cultural heritage data. You might find this link quite interesting. And then another group will have some of these photos which are destined for a stereoscope, which is included. Can you create a spreadsheet about these images? What columns do you need? What kind of data will you represent? Can you indicate what's missing? What is not present in this system of representation or in these images? What are the ethical implications of working with such images? What, if any, thoughts do you have about engagement activities focused on these images? It could be anything. Can be as wild as you like, because this is an exercise. Does it open up further ideas beyond these specific images of activity. So we are looking at activities for all of these. What stories of further forms of mediation do they, or further forms of mediation, do they suggest to you? And then children's games. You'll have a couple of kids' games. They're only a spur to thinking about children's games. Here's this Peter Bruegel the Elder painting, all sorts of games going on here. They don't look like children from our modern perception. They look like tiny adults. That's interesting in its own right. They don't look like, the kind of kids I see on the bus in London, but what does that signify is another question. So what forms of cultural heritage data can you identify as being associated with children's games? What are the ethics of working with that kind of cultural heritage data? Create a spreadsheet of your data findings and ideas for appropriate approaches to working with children's games. Perhaps you might draw upon your own memories of play, if you have them, or observations as an adult, or an archive you've found, or even this picture by Peter Bruegel the Elder. And there's some links there that you might find interesting. So don't forget the enriched interpretive experience framework or the other ideas we've looked at. There may be more than one group addressing one of these themes. It depends on the size of the group. Of course, you may reject or accept any of these ideas, propositions, provocations, constructs. Be ready to share your group's responses on the Padlet, which is linked to in the Moodle, and to use the spreadsheet your group creates in the next session for working with Python. That's the Padlet there. There's a link to it. Good luck. In the next session, we'll use Python to undertake an exploratory analysis of your data sets or a dummy data set, which we'll provide, and to create basic visualizations and responses. In other sessions, we will learn more about games, storytelling, co-design, critical creative data visualization. You might find Keats's idea of negative capability inspiring. I do. It's the idea that as long as we have the sort of urge and energy and creativity and imagination to do something, our lack of skill is not that much of a blow to us, is not that much of a problem, as long as we bring this drive, this imagination. I actually completely believe in this myself, in negative capability. It's never held me back. So I hold on to that if you feel overwhelmed by any of the questions we're asking you. Your imagination, your energy to do this will see you through in a really great way. I have no doubt whatsoever. Thank you so much. There's some further resources in the back here. Good luck. Have a look through the PDF before you start, and I hope you really enjoy this exercise. So before you start the task, you might want to spend some time looking at the PDF for methodology and ethics in cultural heritage data, and refresh your understanding of that by looking at the PDF whenever you want in completing this task.